like I said, today's lineup includes what we like to call masters of strategy execution. We will hear from these three unique perspectives: the consultant, the coach, and the leader. Do you want to sit with me?
Yeah.
All right, let me introduce Jean. He's the first person we're going to grill today. So,
Luckily, I like barbecues, so.
you got it. I'm excited to present our first Master of Strategy Execution. He's representing the consultant's perspective, and that's Jean Abou Assi, who is a partner of digital and technology at PWC. He has wide experience in leading large-scale digital transformation programs and is well-versed in the entire digitization process from strategy to delivery. He works with senior executives, business owners, technology teams, creatives, and product managers to make these hyper-personalized digital journeys come to life. And we wanted Jean to come because he understands that full spectrum. And he's been in the dirt, right? He's been in the weeds with people trying to deliver the final product. And we think that's going to be an incredible perspective. So we're going to talk about that path of strategy from the boardroom to the office or factory floor, whatever you want to call it. Or in my case, the bedroom floor, because I work from home. And then we're also going to talk about the relationship between companies and their consultants. Because let's face it, we're in a market where most strategies don't come to life without a consultant in the room. So rather than debate that relationship, we want to talk about how to make it meaningful and how to derive value from it for both parties, in fact. Thanks so much for joining me, Jean.
The pleasure is mine, Marilyn.
All right, we're going to have three themes. We're starting with those different levels of strategy. And when you and I had a chat, I think you started, and I loved your clarity. You said, Marilyn, the first thing that people get wrong is they confuse the levels of strategy. Talk me through that.
Yeah, so morning, everyone. So let's hope we're not going to make it boring, and we're going to challenge each other a bit. So is it better now?
It's perfect.
Great. So first thing when we discuss these strategy types, for me it's weird to discuss strategy types because for me it's just the depths of the strategy that we're looking at. If you look at it from one perspective, the best analogy is let's compare it to the human body. The brain is for me the corporate strategy. This is where we're making our vision, we're adjusting our course, and this is where we're calling the shots. If I look at the heart, that's for me the business strategy. This is where I decide about the momentum, the push. Am I going to run? Am I going to take it slowly? Do I need to really work on my heartbeat? This is the business strategy. Compare it to your business lines, deciding which segment to attack. And then once we cascade it further, we look into what we call today basically the functional strategy. This is where the organs of the body are acting together, how my hand has a role in all of that. Think about it. What's the role of my marketing department in deciding the tone of voice when I'm reaching out to the customer? What's the role of my product team once looking at the customer experience? And what everyone tends to forget is the fourth level, which no one cares about at a certain stage, which is the operational strategy. How I'm going to operate the day-to-day. The strategy is not a one-time exercise, and this is where we fall into the cracks. Now, what I like these days is we're adding a fifth dimension, and that came from basically the digital, I would say, born companies like Amazon, Facebook, where we call it about the differentiation strategy. And that's today really one of the most pillars that we need to focus on. We're in a very competitive landscape. Technology is pushing us to take quick shots. We're seeing what's happening from a disruption perspective. What differentiates me from others? This is what matters these days. So if we look at this analogy, you understand that it's not different types. It's the completed pyramid of these 5 pillars that's going to make my strategy complete.
And we spoke about the fact that oftentimes one of the places where this breaks is in that transition between different levels. Where have you seen it break? But also, I think we can all tell horror stories of when our strategy didn't work out or we didn't deliver on it. But also, what have you seen companies that do this really well figure out that others haven't?
So, if you look at how we define the success of the strategy, the struggle is everyone looks at it as a 3 to 5 years exercise. Shall I wait 5 years to understand whether I'm succeeding? That's the first question. Second part is you're going to see that I'm a big fan of lean startups and lean management, basically. And I believe today that's the biggest shift that we're seeing with digital companies. They are product focused. They look at their MVPs. They want to measure faster their failure to learn and adapt. The struggle I see in most of the companies is that the strategy is like the Bible. We said it once, we're not ready to diverge, we're not ready to reshape, we're not ready to say we need to do something different. The world is moving so fast, the market dynamics are changing. Look at just the impact that we had, I would say 6 months ago, whenever OpenAI came in and Gen AI came in. Suddenly everyone woke up and said, okay, there is something big happening. Imagine that I'm still stuck to my 5 years plan. I don't want to take AI part of my enablers. What would I do? And the struggle is today, and we're going to discuss this a bit. So you were talking about agility, Marilyn. You were talking about 90% of strategies fail. For me, it's all dependent on one big element, people. People need to be aware about the strategy. We need to create a purpose for these people, which we always fail to do. Most of the time, the corporate strategy is done on really the top floors with the C-levels. Cascading it to the rest of the organization is always hard. It's not about just communication. I can communicate what's my 5-year strategic plan. Sure. But how do I create this purpose for these employees, for them to feel that I'm part of it? And this is what matters. And I think we're going to discuss a bit about this success, I would say, in how we go into the execution part. If I look at the people, we categorize them easily in 3 big buckets. You have the people that are going to be very excited. We're going to have the people that's going to be on the, we call them the pirates, basically. These are going to be fighting you internally, but that's the part I'm ready to deal with. The ones that are catastrophic are the neutrals, the ones sitting without an opinion. Yeah. And why it is catastrophic? Because that's the largest chunk of our human capital. People that are indifferent to the strategy because we're not capable of communicating this purpose. And without these people, good luck in changing a process. Good luck in doing this change management. So success deep down is for me how we convince this pool that we have a purpose. We need you part of the strategy. And it's not like a strategy that was imposed, because that's the big challenge when we talk about consultants working in this region. For me, what we're asked to do is to come co-create and challenge. If we're seen as consultants coming to impose a strategy, then the strategy is not the organization strategy. It's the consultant strategy. I did it, I can implement it, but it's not mine. So if we change this mentality about how we're perceiving building the strategy, and we're bringing the consultant to co-create and challenge, this is what makes it very different. And this is the push that we're making in the market for the past, I would say, 5 years. And to be honest, this region specifically, we're seeing a lot of leaders coming in and saying, we don't need consultants. What we need the consultants for is for one reason. I want to make sure I increase the chances of my executions. So help me understand where others failed. We don't need smart consultants to tell us what is the white space. We know our products. We're seeing the market. What we need is to understand how to maximize the chances of executing it right. And whenever this link is created, this is when you maximize the relation between the consultant and the company toward, I would say, the good implementation of the strategy.
So I want to just double click on something you said around that middle, the people in the middle of that distribution curve. How do you engage them? What have you done or seen in companies that you thought, this is a good one? I'm going to remember this as a great practice of a way that these people were brought into the process.
The typical answer would be communication. For me, I don't like the typical. What I've seen working fine is creating these catalysts that surround these people and help them create the purpose as we go. For me, if we look at the definition of leaders, we expect the leaders to make the shots, and we expect the leaders to steer. In successful companies, the leaders are creating the right environment and the enablers for these people to make the decisions. I'm not sitting in a retail shop to basically dictate how the customer experience will look like. It's my teller, it's my officer in charge. So if we look at the leaders as the sole people in an organization that are supposed to make a decision, this is where everything goes wrong. These people in the middle, most of the time, they just want to feel that they are in a secure environment, that understand their needs. And believe me, their needs are not around making you richer. Their needs is basically go at 5 o'clock, make it with their kids, live a good life. We talk about work-life balance. Most of the time in transformation, we never see that. If we don't create this environment for these people, good luck in executing the strategy. You cannot replace these people. I wish I can say consultants can do the implementation. We would be super rich, but that's unfortunately that's not what's going to happen. We need these people to be there to steer it away. And why I say this portion is the catastrophic part, because the good ones, that's the music to my ears. The bad ones are easy to convince or to shoot down. So whenever I spot them, I would say, okay,
violent.
I would spend 2 weeks on convincing. You shouldn't be spending more time. That's the dilemma.
Yeah.
Not everyone will support you.
That's true.
And the more you drag someone is taking you to the other direction, you would spend enough time to address their issues. And these people that are reacting, they are willing to speak about their issues. It's either they are not aligned with one direction, they are feeling that they are threatened, they need to do a certain change. At least I can understand how to talk to them. The middle part that are neutral, if we don't create the purpose, they will never open up. And believe me, that's 70% of every organization.
Yeah, of course, it's a distribution curve. And you're making me think of something that one of my mentors, Prof. Jose Santos, who works on managing multinationals, always said, and it always stuck with me. I love what you said about leadership. I think what leaders often forget is that, and this is his sentence, so full copyright to him, but it's what you are here to do is to manage the performance of the organization, not the work.
True.
Actually, you shouldn't be doing any of the work. Your job is to figure out, and you said it beautifully, how to get everybody else to be in the right environment, mindset, information, all the stuff we talked about. But I love this thing, manage the performance of the company, not the work. And I think that echoes what you were saying a little bit.
And Marilyn, let's be frank. I've seen trend, so let's look at the trend for the past 5 years. It wasn't really strategies, it was transformation strategies. What does it mean? I think the best analogy to compare it through, we're asking a company, imagine that's an airplane, we're flying, we're replacing the engines while in the air, we're opening the door to do maintenance on the wings. This is a transformation. We're doing an open heart surgery over a body that is working. We have customers, we have BAU happening. It's not like we were in a part where every company was starting from scratch and we're doing strategies on a greenfield part. Every single company was in transformation for the past, I would say, 10 years, but the last 5 were, I would say, very pushy on this front. So if you look at what you're ending up having is telling the people that we're transforming because we're at the risk of losing our business. And as consultants, we're very good in creating this scene that, look, there is someone coming to eat your pie.
Right.
We always use Nokia as the best example of how things can go wrong. We always use basically these examples. We never use Adobe as an example, looking at how they started with PDF and then ended up with the best, I would say, experience management and digital content platforms. So we create the scene to say there is someone coming to eat your pie, we need to react. We're already embedding fear. And whenever we're communicating in a town hall, we work really on certain elements that are super important. For me, once we talk about people and you talk about culture, the best thing that consultant would do, they finish the strategy, they tell you, let's now work on your new culture. They forget that culture is impacted by behaviors. The first 6 months are going to be a bumpy road where every employee is just fighting back. How do we change these behaviors? And why I'm saying that? Because the only ones that can change these behaviors are your leaders that are sitting on the top of the floor. And what I've seen working, Marilyn, is whenever you have a strategy and you have your C-levels walking the corridors every day with a consultant, walking the floor, showing them what reality means on the ground. Showing them what is the process, what is the burden of every people. We assume that whenever we do good communication, we have the buy-in, everything will go as smooth as possible. We forget we have BAUs. We have people that are dragged down. The funny part is always that we create all the strategy and we forget to create these checkpoints to check how healthy we are in the measurement of the strategy. I think you said something nice when you
If
compare
Jean
it
says
to...
that, I'll take it.
So whenever we compare it to video games, so the beauty of a video game, you're the only one calling the shot. In an organization, it's not the CEO calling the shots. It's all the N-1s. We have the politics. We have 10,000 areas that comes in. How we sort these out. And from one perspective, most of the companies that did it right is they empowered the people to take decisions without being afraid. And that's, for me, the formula. People, without empowerment, without tools, they would never make a decision. Imagine managing them by fear, the fear of saying, if you make a bad decision, you're going to be thrown away. I would say this needs to be changing. And once this changes, everyone will be really pushing through. Because for me, it's easier to make a decision and fail fast and learn, than sitting idle doing nothing, risking everything by sitting idle. And that's the majority of the things that are going wrong. You tell me today, are we being, because if you go and read a bit the case studies, they would tell you a big chunk is failing because the strategy was overambitious. If I don't dream big, I will never move on. So there is nothing called overambitious for me. There was just a lack of understanding what do we need to reach these targets. Imagine Amazon, whenever they started with their first vision. Everyone will say it's not executable, but today, no, we have the drive, we have the push. The struggle is not in over-ambitious strategies. The struggle is not in trying not to test the product. The struggle is, and we're living in a world where information is flowing around us. We can, in no time, do testing, A/B testing with people. So we have the tools that enable us to test and understand whether our hypothesis is good. We can identify quickly the wide gaps. The struggle is, whenever it comes to the execution, we tend to forget that the people doing it are not seeing the same view as we did. And how we bridge it is the leadership role. So for me, if we're expecting them, again, to make a decision, we're mistaken. I want the leader just to create the right environment for the people that are driving the ship to make the real shot.
I love that. I have two questions off the back of that. One of them is around that capability gap. So oftentimes what we see in this is that companies dream big, and while they need to acquire, because one of the things that I just want to establish, right? When you have a strategic horizon, when you say this strategy needs to be accomplished, this is the 3-year or 5-year view, that means you won't actually know if it's done until then, right? Because otherwise, why is it a 3-year strategy if you can measure that tomorrow? So we're going to talk about measurement, but what I also find is lacking is that, great, we have these 3 years to get there, understanding where we are and what we need to build, and understanding it dynamically, because as you just pointed out, maybe years ago, a strategy would never have included generative AI, and now we have to. But that capability gap, I think, is one of the things I often see almost dismissed. It's like the last 3 slides in the deck, but we haven't done it in any meaningful way, and we haven't really designed the plan to go from here to there. I want you to speak towards that capability gap.
I think you're
I'm being mean.
No, you're being nice by saying it's in the last 3 slides of the deck.
Okay.
What's worse, it's always found on a paper called risks.
Oh yes, that's the other one.
Whereas we forget that
it's only one slide, by the way.
Exactly. And the more you see it as a risk, the more we go into the dark side of the strategy. Capabilities are your enablers. If I put it in a risk, that's the first mistake. And shortage of capabilities is normal. Let's look at the digital trends. Whenever COVID hit, everyone was suddenly requiring digital talents. We were really craving to get developers. But this never stopped people from reaching their targets. So the struggle in capabilities is, if you look at it from a risk perspective, you're just using it always as an excuse to say, my strategy will not work. The strategy needs to go hand in hand with you building the capabilities, upskilling, getting staff augmentation, and moving on. The struggle in the capabilities is whenever the strategy was imposed by consultants, not endorsed by the executives. That means the executive was just listening. They saw a nice deck, presented to the board, and said, let's go and crack on. If we look at it from this perspective, capability is going to be a risk. If we look at it from one perspective where I know where is my vision, and I'm bringing the consultant to tell me what is the best way of getting these capabilities. Because let's look into our world. I don't want to talk about the past. We're looking at cloud, AI, software as a service. We have tons of good solutions that can come in. You can assemble them with your stack and move faster. The struggle is we never position these part of the strategy. We keep it for the execution part. We keep it for our managers to make a decision. And this is where the budget will have a difference, because I was assuming that I'm building in-house. Now I need to go and partner. I need to acquire. And now we're becoming smarter in this aspect, because today this is, so if I look at the landscape, we used to say buy or versus build. So either you buy the technology, buy whatever you need as an asset, or you build it internally. The beauty now, we're living in a world where assemble is coming in, and that's for me key. Assemble means I don't want to do it alone. There is good people, good platforms. How do I leverage them to create a value proposition is what matters these days. And let's look at most of the successful businesses. They didn't do it alone. They assembled good pieces from other people. And this is why I'm saying capabilities today is no longer a risk for me. Capabilities is an enabler if seen part of your value proposition.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, the whole process of strategy execution is acquiring the capabilities. The whole thing is about getting them, because we know that when these capabilities are in place, this is what we'll be able to deliver, right?
Speaking about the challenge, so if we look at what my customers want me to do these days is not just acquire the capability. Retaining the capability is worse these days.
That's a good one, absolutely.
And retention, we use always to see it from a perspective that's always commercial. The toxic environment, the culture, the purpose again. And look at the schemes. Look at the big product companies, Apple, Amazon. Are they creating basically most of the schemes for retention by giving you stocks, trying to create this part? This is what matters these days. It's beyond acquiring the capability. Retaining the capability is going to cost me way more, because if I lose product owners during my journey, I need to start from scratch every time. So I would say retaining is now way more important than just acquiring it through.
Absolutely, such a valuable point. I want to go back to your pilot metaphor, right? We're driving the plane, we're fixing it at the same time, and we all know that for pilots to manage these situations, they need a great dashboard, right? They need good information that's not, reinterpreted. They need access to the real stuff. So in terms of that measurement piece, and knowing that you cannot measure the outcome of a strategy until it is done, how do you go about thinking through the measurement piece in the process of flying? I know, we're going to answer all of the questions of the universe today.
It's a nice one, because if I take the CFO hat, that's the first guy that always establishes dashboards whenever we have a strategy, because he's keen on monitoring the budget spent. Except CFOs, I've never seen people interested in understanding how we measure it through. Because either they're waiting for the end result, which is way far.
We're done.
So I think what I like in the lean startup mentality, and I link it a bit to scaled agile, is these OKRs that we're creating on a quarterly basis. For me, the major shift is whenever we start to understand that it's not really the big rocket, my only measurement. I need to understand whether the pieces are getting together. Now, the trust is whenever I nail piece one, how do I link it to the other? This is where the leadership, again, needs to jump in. But if I look at the type of dashboards that today matters, for me, from one perspective, if you look always on the execution, we're always keen on the delivery dates and how far we are from the commitments. I don't want to say that's not an important metric. That's an important metric. But equally, where is my customer experience? Where is my product efficiency? Because all these, I'm going to reach a point, and this is where we fail. I might have the best product, but it's the most expensive. Why am I making the shots? So today, I'm seeing a major shift in the way we're measuring the strategy. If you look at the big organization, the first thing they do these days is directly they establish a strategy management office. Mm-hmm. Usually, it used to be with a strategy office that, again, is measuring simply the financial part of the metrics. CFO is managing budgets. The head of strategy is managing the growth, how much are we acquiring per month. Now we have way smarter parts. We're looking at what is the type of testing done with the customers. Is A/B testing done? What is the feedback? Should we reconsider the product, yes or no? So these are the kind of practices we're seeing in. And it's a good thing to see that people now are caring about the product shape before the end of the 3 years. Because everyone is understanding that we don't have another chance. If we fail by the end of year 3, it's hard to get back. We spent most of our budget, we're nearly doomed. So they are trying to fail faster and bringing what we call it shift left. So they're trying to shift as much as possible to the left side of our timeline, these OKRs checkpoints.
I love that. I think one of the things that I really love talking with you, is that you're so pragmatic about these things. And so I thought that out of all the consultants I know, you'd be open to answering my next question honestly.
Let's see.
obviously we talked about consultants never not being in the room when strategy is developed, some more and more when strategy is executed too. And I'm not, I mean, I'm a consultant, so I'm not going to be hypocritical and say, you don't need us. But I want to say, what is the best way to structure that partnership so that it's healthy for the organization and that it creates long-term value, not short-term dependence?
First thing, don't bring the consultant for the seal. And when I say the seal is the nice flashy logo that you're going to say to your board, if I failed, I had a big name next to mine, so my failure is his.
So don't.
So don't.
Don't do that.
Two, we label it as co-creation. For me, it's the challenging part. And what's happening, the major shift I'm seeing these days is that in the past 5-10 years, it was always the organization challenging the consultant on his proposition, which makes me feel that I'm the one accountable and this is the audience. That was sadly what's happening. The shift now is I'm seeing executives bringing the consultants to challenge and complement.
Nice.
And this is where we're playing a major role these days. So I'm going to give you practical examples. Let's look at Saudi Arabia Vision 2030. Do you think this vision was shaped by consultants?
Sounds like it.
I can tell you a major part of it is now the focus and the drive and the vision of the leadership. It's being challenged these days because of the outlooks of the feasibility of it. And if you look at the most successful, I would say, strategies for me, it's for me the past years in UAE and KSA, in all honesty, because there was a drive and a focus from one leadership pushing the active agendas. Compared to organization, that's not sadly what's happened. You have boards, we have C-levels that change, you have new opinions coming in, you have rotations. So for me, the role is I need the ownership of the strategy to be with the organization, not with the consultants. That was the biggest issue that we're seeing in the past 10 years. And not only in this region, it was globally the same way.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Thank you for that. That's an honest answer. I'll ask you my last question, and then we'll give it back to the audience. But what is one leadership quality that you think is essential to executing the strategy?
Storytelling.
Great one. Yeah. Excellent.
Look, I've worked with leaders that have this passion, and I would say it's a skill to storytell the strategy, because we're people that like imagination. Whenever we're alone, we just imagine stuff. We put ourselves in this virtual story context. A good leader is not the one that's going to just give me the bullets, the summary part. It's really helping me understand that I have a role in the story. Dream big with me. This is why I'm saying storytelling is super important.
That's such a great one. And since the beginning of time, we've been responding to stories, so it's built into our being to be good at both listening and telling stories. Thank you for that.
And look at the parallel. So in the agile world, we talk about our user stories and epics.
That is true.
It doesn't come from...
It's deeply ingrained in us. All right, I want to give the audience a chance to ask some questions. I know Tala told me there's quite a few, so we'll start at the back and move to the front, I guess.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It was amazing what you just said. And one point particularly caught my attention because you said Lean and Six Sigma, and I am practically in love with Lean Six Sigma. And what is missing out of certain strategies, and a lot of people try to replicate Lean Six Sigma as a strategy, but major part of failure is the sustenance plan. And I think none of the strategies till now, they cater for that risk of sustaining that strategy even for 1 year. As a consultant, do you think there is a particular way you can tell these people to, tell particular senior leadership to assess the risk of not sustaining that strategy? Because it could be a beautiful strategy, but the failure and the strategy will fall apart if there is no sustenance plan.
Look, sustaining is key. I think the struggle in Lean is whenever you start scaling. Lean is good enough when I'm working with MVPs and I have people that understand that I'm starting with a minimum product that I can test the ground with. Unfortunately, organizations are not interested in the first MVP. They want the big picture.
Yes.
Convincing these people that, no, start small and
Yeah.
then grow. And this is why I talk about the scaling. Sustaining is part of it, because you need to start small. The struggle, and this is why I'm saying the strategies in the region are transformational by nature. We're fighting for existence. No one will accept a small part. Whenever they embrace this, they would understand that it's not like I'm telling you the first MVP needs 2 years and the second needs another 3. But you need to create this engine that's going to help you iterate. The struggle I'm seeing is you don't have this engine that helps you iterate. You burn most of your budget for the MVP, and then you lose out your engine that's going to give you the iterations following it through. So that's the sustaining part that's missing. And I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
And let's look at the successful lean models. Toyota, Beko.
I was just refraining from taking no TPS people here, right? No Honeywell people.
Exactly.
And it's fine.
And what I love in these companies, they reach the point where lean went, I would say, way beyond what we look at. So I take Beko as a small example. Beko, they give every bunch of employees a budget of $1,000. They tell them, come, pitch your idea, work on the MVP. If we like it, you're going to get returns on it. They created the purpose. They created this iterative brainstorming engine without needing to put a department into the process. They created the incentive, and it's there. But we need to shape it.
Beautiful, thank you. 2 more questions.
Key thing that you see will, with your experience, you know, if that key thing is there, of course it's a success, right? If that key thing isn't there, the execution is not a success. What is the key thing?
Make us right and say leadership.
No, I would say, I'll tell you one thing. So for me, success is linked to how passionate the leader is about the strategy and how invested he's in it. If he's just an audience, good luck.
Yeah, straight cut, great leaders. The wild card. Yes, Ravi.
Hi, Ravi Anand. I work for General Electric. So a lot of this, what you've said, it comes naturally to me. So, but I'm glad I'm here and you know, I'm listening and it validates a lot of stuff. My question to you is, we're talking a lot about execution strategies. We're talking about running a company. What about growth? What about sales strategies? What about acquiring businesses? What about business development? I mean, we clearly miss this. And I mentor a few startups, but I see this as a very big gap because you're more product-oriented, you're more execution-oriented. I'm a lean practitioner, so I understand what you're saying. But I think where we are missing the point, and maybe this is not the point of discussion here, but what we are missing clearly is how do you generate business? If you have no business, you can keep all those theories in your back pocket and live with it, right?
I had to learn that the hard way.
So Ravi, you nailed it. When we started the first part, we talked about the types of strategy. Everyone is stuck at the corporate and forgets the functional and operational. For me, operationalization is where sales comes in. Let's be frank about one part. Everyone believes that the first milestone to get ourselves into is that we need to have our product ready, because this is where most of the failures comes in. The shock is when you discover that, good luck in sorting out your acquisition strategy. And acquisition needs to go hand in hand from the beginning while you're shaping the product. I discussed a bit the tone of voice, how I'm reaching up, the CX. What I'm seeing most recently is that they only start focusing about acquisition whenever the product is ready. It's totally wrong. But I will tell you why this mentality is there. The mentality is there because everyone believes if I have a good product, I can sort out sales later on. The product can sell itself. And we have examples on it. Look at Karim. How much effort Karim did on acquisition and sales?
Karim is in the room.
They can answer that themselves. So there is precedence where we're seeing that today, whenever you have a good product, the word of mouth is enough to drive the traction. And look at the adoption of the new digital products. In non-digital products, I agree with you, it needs to be thought of. But this is one major element that everyone keeps on saying, let's get the product first and worry about the sales. The struggle I'm seeing, everyone is getting the shock whenever they discover that acquisition is harder than what we're seeing. It's not about sorting out our marketing strategy. you might end up by having the wrong segment being shaped in your product, or you might have an overpopulated competition on the segment you're pushing on. It's going to be harder. You need to make compromises on. And I don't want to name companies, but there is a lot of companies in the region that are now facing this challenge. They have very nice experiences, very nice digital products, and you're looking at their acquisition, it's nearly nowhere. But I'll tell you one thing that now we're seeing from the customer sides being pushed on consultants. So in the past 2 years, we're hearing more something called skin in the game. The customer comes and tells you, you know what, I don't care about the slides that you're going to position. I don't care if it's just going to give me the product on time. I'm going to only pay you when you activate my product in the market. And this is where we're seeing the shift. I was telling Marilyn about it. We're seeing a major shift in the way we're constructing our consulting services. Most of our bids these days include an activation cycle, which means I want to think about how to activate the product, and I'm going to get only paid when I activate the product. The good side about it, I'm getting way more money because I'm sharing the top line and bottom line as a consultant. At the same time, the client is saying, I'm paying you from the dollar you're earning to me. So it's win-win. If we're both losing, we're both losing. If we're winning, good luck for you.
Love that. A win-win relationship is what we're after. Thank you so much, Jean. A round of applause to you.
Thank you.